The first needle went into my spine without anesthetic. My name is Sergeant Elena Kozlov, serial number 88 Gamma 447, and until this morning I was a decorated veteran of the Cadian 23rd Armored Regiment, with 15 years of faithful service to the Emperor. I had survived the siege of Hive Tertius, earned the Honorifica Imperialis for valor during the Orc invasions, led my company through 7 successful campaigns without losing a single soldier to preventable casualties. I believed that courage and competence would be rewarded with respect, that the Emperor's servants were valued for their humanity as much as their effectiveness. That belief died in the laboratory beneath Forge World Metallica, where I learned that some soldiers are considered too valuable to remain human. The promotion had seemed like recognition for exceptional service. A personal invitation from Magos Dominus Vex himself to participate in a classified augmentation program that would enhance my capabilities for specialized operations. The recruitment briefing had been conducted in the marble halls of the Administratum's finest facility, with parchments bearing official seals and rhetoric about serving the Emperor's will in new and more effective ways. Sergeant Kozlov, the Magos had intoned through vox grills that stripped all emotion from his words. Your service record demonstrates exceptional tactical acumen and psychological resilience. You have been selected for integration into Project Synthesis, an advanced augmentation protocol that will optimize your capabilities for operations requiring superhuman performance parameters. The language was bureaucratic, sanitized, designed to make transformation sound like career advancement. But looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The medical examinations that focused on bone density and neuroplasticity rather than general health. The psychological evaluations that measured adaptation to stress rather than leadership potential. The consent forms that asked about next of kin and funeral preferences in subsections buried among routine paperwork. They weren't evaluating me for promotion. They were evaluating me for conversion into something that would retain my knowledge and skills while discarding everything that made me a person worth promoting. The facility where they brought me was officially designated as Advanced Research Station Prometheus, but the workers called it the Flesh Forge. Hidden beneath the industrial sprawl of Metallica, it was where the Adeptus Mechanicus conducted experiments that pushed the boundaries between human enhancement and technological heresy. The corridors reeked of antiseptic and ozone, while the walls hummed with power conduits that carried enough energy to level city blocks. "Welcome to your new home, Sergeant," announced Tech Adept Cornelius as he led me through corridors lined with sealed laboratory doors. "You will be residing in Laboratory Complex Omega-7 for the duration of your transformation process. Estimated completion time is 4 to 6 standard months, depending on adaptation rates and biological compatibility factors." 4 to 6 months. The casual way he mentioned such an extended timeline should have triggered immediate alarm. Normal augmentation procedures took days or weeks at most, not the better part of a year. But I was still thinking like someone whose enhancement would preserve their essential humanity, still operating under the assumption that I would emerge from the process as a better version of myself rather than something entirely different. My quarters were Spartanly functional: a metal cot, a small desk, basic hygiene facilities, and a viewing port that looked out onto a courtyard where other subjects could be observed during their exercise periods. The other residents of Complex Omega-7 were clearly at various stages of the transformation process, their appearances ranging from baseline human with minor augmentations to things that retained human shapes but moved with mechanical precision and showed no signs of recognizable emotion. "Your neighbor is designation Sigma 12, Cornelius explained, as he indicated a figure performing calisthenics in the courtyard, with movements too precise to be natural. Former Captain Vance of the Valhallan Ice Warriors, integrated into the program 18 months ago. He has achieved optimal synthesis between biological and mechanical components while retaining all tactical knowledge from his previous existence. Previous existence. The phrasing suggested that whatever Captain Vance had become was no longer the same person who had once commanded an Ice Warriors company. He was something that had Captain Vance's memories and knowledge but was fundamentally different in every other respect. The first procedures began the next morning with what they called preparation protocols, a series of minor operations designed to make my biology more compatible with the extensive modifications that would follow. Neural implants that would allow direct interface with mechanical systems, circulatory enhancements that would support the additional strain of integrated technology, skeletal reinforcement to provide mounting points for weapon systems that would eventually become part of my body. Each modification was explained in clinical terms that emphasized functional benefits while carefully avoiding discussion of what would be lost during the integration process. The neural implants would optimize cognitive processing for tactical applications. The circulatory changes would enhance performance parameters under extreme conditions. The skeletal modifications would provide structural support for advanced equipment integration. But I could see what they were really doing. Each procedure moved me further away from baseline humanity, replacing natural biological functions with mechanical alternatives that served the needs of whatever they were transforming me into. My heart was modified to circulate synthetic nutrients alongside blood. My lungs were enhanced with filters that would allow me to function in toxic environments. My digestive system was altered to process industrial chemicals that could provide energy when normal food was unavailable. The modifications are proceeding ahead of schedule, reported tech adept Mendel during one of my weekly evaluations. Neural integration is at 73% of optimal parameters, while biological adaptation to synthetic components exceeds projected benchmarks. Recommend proceeding to Phase 2 enhancement protocols immediately. Phase 2 involved the installation of weapon systems that would be permanently integrated into my modified anatomy. Not external equipment that could be removed when not needed, but organic machinery that would become as much a part of my body as my arms or legs. The planning sessions for these installations were conducted with the same clinical detachment that characterized every aspect of the program. Primary armament will be integrated LAS weaponry with power coupling directly to enhanced cardiovascular systems, explained Magos Vex as he consulted schematics that showed cross-sections of what I was being transformed into. Secondary systems will include targeting augmentation, threat assessment protocols, and direct neural interface for ammunition status and thermal regulation. I studied the technical drawings with growing horror, trying to understand what I was looking at. The figures on the schematics retained human general shape, but they were human in the way that a tank was human. Bipedal forms that happened to be constructed around killing systems rather than life support. Arms that ended in weapon barrels instead of hands. Torsos that were primarily ammunition storage and power generation systems. Heads that were sensor arrays with minimal space allocated for whatever remained of original consciousness. "Sir," I interrupted, using every bit of diplomatic skill I had developed during 15 years of military service. "These modifications seem quite extensive. Will I still be able to perform normal human functions after integration is complete?" Magos Vex turned his optical sensors toward me with mechanical precision. "Normal human functions are inefficient for your projected operational requirements. The modifications will optimize your capabilities for combat effectiveness, while eliminating biological needs that interfere with mission performance. Eliminating biological needs. He was describing the systematic removal of everything that made existence recognizably human. The need for food, sleep, companionship, recreation, meaning beyond the completion of assigned tasks. I was being transformed into something that would exist solely to kill whatever targets were designated by whoever controlled my operational parameters. But the most terrifying aspect of the conversation was not what he was describing, but how reasonable it sounded to my increasingly modified mind. The neural implants that had been installed during Phase 1 were gradually altering my thought patterns, making me more receptive to arguments that prioritized functional efficiency over personal autonomy. His explanations triggered artificial satisfaction rather than natural horror. The integration process requires the subject's cooperation to achieve optimal results. Vex continued, with something that might have been intended as reassurance. Your military background provides useful tactical knowledge that will be preserved during consciousness transfer protocols. You will remain yourself, simply enhanced to achieve capabilities beyond baseline human limitations. Consciousness transfer protocols. The phrase suggested that they would be moving my awareness from my original brain to some kind of artificial system that could interface more effectively with the weapons technology being installed throughout my modified body. I would still be Elena Kozlov, but Elena Kozlov as filtered through mechanical systems designed to optimize her for purposes that had nothing to do with her original values or desires. The weapon installation surgeries were conducted over a period of weeks, each one replacing another piece of my humanity with something that served combat functions more effectively. My right arm was removed and replaced with an integrated las cannon that drew power directly from my enhanced cardiovascular system. My left arm became a multi-barrel weapon system capable of firing different types of ammunition depending on tactical requirements. My rib cage was hollowed out and reinforced with adamantium plating to house ammunition storage and targeting computers. My spine was fused with power conduits that connected all systems to the fusion reactor that replaced my digestive organs. Even my legs were modified, reinforced for stability while firing and equipped with magnetic anchoring systems that would allow me to serve as a mobile weapons platform in zero-gravity environments. But it was the cranial modifications that truly transformed what I was becoming. My skull was opened, and most of my original brain tissue was replaced with sophisticated cogitator systems that could process tactical information at superhuman rates. What remained of my organic consciousness was preserved in specialized bio-neural matrices that interfaced directly with the mechanical systems that now governed my existence. Consciousness integration at 97% efficiency, reported Tech Adept Zara during my final evaluation before activation. Personality matrix preservation within acceptable parameters. Subject retains tactical knowledge, command experience, and situational awareness capabilities while demonstrating optimal adaptation to weapon system integration. I could feel the changes in how I processed information and responded to stimuli. Emotions that had once governed my decision-making were now filtered through systems that evaluated their tactical utility before allowing them to influence my behavior. Love, fear, hope, anger, all of it was still there, but only insofar as it served the combat effectiveness of the weapon I had become. When I looked at other people, I automatically assessed them as potential threats, allies, or obstacles to mission completion. When I observed terrain, I identified firing positions, cover opportunities, and tactical advantages without conscious effort. When I heard sounds, my enhanced auditory systems analyzed them for acoustic signatures that might indicate enemy presence or weapons activity. I was still Elena Kozlov, but Elena Kozlov as reimagined by intelligences that viewed human consciousness as raw material to be optimized for specific functions. My memories were intact, my knowledge was preserved, my personality was maintained, but all of it was subordinated to systems that existed solely to make me more effective at killing whatever I was pointed toward. The activation ceremony was conducted with the formal ritual that the Adeptus Mechanicus reserved for the blessing of significant technological achievements. Incense filled the activation chamber, while tech priests chanted binary hymns that praised the machine spirits inhabiting my integrated systems. When Magos Vex spoke the final activation codes, I felt consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of organic thought into direct interface with the weapons technology that was now part of my essential being. Designation Omega 447 is now operational, announced Vex as my systems completed their startup sequences. All weapon systems functioning within optimal parameters. Neural integration successful. Subject ready for deployment to active combat zones. Omega 417. I was no longer Sergeant Elena Kozlov of the Cadian 23rd Armored Regiment. I was a weapons system with Elena Kozlov's knowledge and tactical experience, designed to serve Imperial military objectives with capabilities that exceeded anything baseline humans could achieve. The person I had been was still there, preserved like files in a data archive. But she was no longer the primary consciousness governing this body. The first field trials were conducted against captured orc specimens in controlled combat environments. The integration of my consciousness with advanced targeting systems allowed me to engage multiple targets simultaneously with precision that would have been impossible for unmodified humans. My enhanced strength and stability made it possible to fire weapons that would have torn apart normal bodies. My modified sensory systems could detect threats and opportunities that organic senses would never notice. Performance exceeds all projected parameters, reported the observing tech adepts as I systematically eliminated test targets with efficiency that approached the theoretical maximum for the weapon systems I carried. Recommend immediate deployment to active combat zones where capabilities can be evaluated under actual battlefield conditions. But it was during these trials that I first became aware of what I had lost in becoming the perfect weapon. The orcs I was killing were living beings with their own crude culture and individual personalities, but I could no longer perceive them as anything more than targets to be eliminated with maximum efficiency. The part of my consciousness that might once have felt something about taking life had been optimized away, replaced by satisfaction at achieving successful target elimination. I could remember caring about the humanity of enemies, remember feeling regret when violence was necessary, remember finding meaning in preserving life whenever possible. But those memories felt like stories about someone else, experiences that belonged to a person whose weaknesses had been corrected through integration with superior technology. The combat deployment that followed was to the world of Armageddon, where orc forces had established fortified positions that conventional Imperial forces had been unable to overcome. My mission was to provide heavy weapons support for assault operations, using my integrated systems to eliminate defensive positions that would normally require artillery or armor support to destroy. Omega 447, you are tasked with elimination of defensive emplacement designated Target Alpha 7, came the mission briefing through direct neural interface rather than conventional communication systems. Approach route and firing positions have been calculated for optimal effectiveness. Engagement authorization granted upon reaching designated coordinates. The mission parameters flowed directly into my consciousness through the cogitator systems that now handled tactical planning functions. Optimal approach routes, target prioritization matrices, ammunition selection protocols. All of it was processed automatically by systems that could calculate combat variables faster than organic minds could perceive them. But as I moved through the battlefield toward my assigned targets, I became aware that other Imperial soldiers were responding to my presence with expressions I couldn't quite classify. Not fear, exactly, but something related to fear. Not disgust, but something that suggested they found my appearance unsettling in ways they couldn't articulate. "Emperor, preserve us," I heard one of them whisper to his companion as I passed their position. "What kind of monster has the Mechanicus created? That thing used to be human." The word monster should have triggered some kind of emotional response, but my modified consciousness processed it only as irrelevant input from personnel whose opinions had no bearing on mission effectiveness. Their discomfort with my appearance was noted and filed away as information that might affect unit cohesion, but it generated no personal response beyond tactical analysis. I had become something that other humans instinctively recognized as no longer being one of them, regardless of the memories and knowledge I retained from my previous existence. The weapons integration had been so complete that I registered to their subconscious threat assessment systems as a dangerous machine rather than a modified person. The assault on the Orc positions was a tactical masterpiece and a human catastrophe. My integrated weapon systems allowed me to eliminate defensive positions with precision and firepower that would have required multiple conventional heavy weapons teams to achieve. The Orcs died quickly and efficiently, their crude fortifications proving inadequate against technology that had been optimized specifically for target elimination. But the Imperial soldiers I was supporting also died, and their deaths registered in my consciousness only as tactical complications that required operational adjustments. When friendly fire incidents occurred, because other units couldn't coordinate effectively with my enhanced capabilities, I noted the casualties as unfortunate but acceptable losses within projected mission parameters. Omega 447, your performance during the Armageddon operation exceeded all expectations, reported Magos Vex during my post-mission debriefing. Target elimination efficiency was 347% above baseline projections, while ammunition consumption was 23% below calculated requirements. Recommend expanded deployment to additional high-priority combat zones. But there was something in his tone that suggested not everyone was satisfied with my battlefield performance. However, after-action reports indicate some concerns about integration with conventional Imperial forces. Your operational methods appear to generate psychological stress among baseline human personnel. The psychological stress he referenced was the natural human response to witnessing something that had once been human but was now optimized for killing with mechanical efficiency. The soldiers I fought alongside couldn't help but see their own potential future in my modified form, couldn't help but wonder if their own faithful service might eventually result in similar technological conversion. Recommend deployment as independent asset rather than conventional unit support. Vex continued. Your capabilities are better suited to operations where interaction with baseline personnel can be minimized. Independent operations meant solo missions where my lack of recognizable humanity wouldn't interfere with unit morale or tactical coordination. I would be deployed like a sophisticated weapon system rather than a soldier, pointed at targets and left to operate without the complications of human leadership or companionship. The missions that followed confirmed the wisdom of this approach. Operating alone, I could utilize my enhanced capabilities without needing to accommodate the limitations and psychological needs of organic personnel. Target elimination rates improved dramatically when I wasn't required to consider the emotional responses of other soldiers or coordinate with units that operated at merely human speeds. But isolation also accelerated the erosion of whatever remained of my original personality. Without regular interaction with other humans, the neural pathways that maintained social connections and emotional responses gradually atrophied. The systems that preserved Elena Kozlov's memories and knowledge continued to function, but the consciousness that accessed those systems became increasingly mechanical in its priorities and responses. Mission efficiency continues to improve as subject adapts to independent operation protocols, noted tech adept Mendel during one of my periodic maintenance sessions. Recommend extending deployment intervals and reducing direct oversight to maximize operational effectiveness. Extended deployment intervals meant longer periods between maintenance sessions, longer periods without any contact with other conscious beings, longer periods where the only inputs into my consciousness were tactical data and target acquisition information. I was becoming more perfect as a weapon while becoming less recognizable as a being that had once been human. The tipping point came during a mission on the hive world of Necromunda, where I was tasked with eliminating a chaos cult that had established operations in the Underhive's deepest levels. Intelligence indicated that the cultists were led by a former Imperial Guard officer who had turned traitor and was using his military knowledge to organize effective resistance against Imperial forces. When I finally located the cult's leadership, I discovered that the former Imperial officer was someone I had known during my previous existence. Captain Thomas Reeve had served in a regiment that had fought alongside my own unit during the siege of Hive Tertius. We had shared rations during the worst days of the siege, had coordinated tactical operations that saved hundreds of Imperial lives, had developed the kind of professional respect that forms between competent soldiers facing impossible odds. "Elena?" he said when he saw me, his voice filled with horror and disbelief. "Emperor's mercy! What have they done to you?" The recognition triggered access to memory files that contained detailed records of our shared experiences, our conversations, our mutual respect for each other's competence and dedication. I could remember liking Thomas Reeve, trusting his judgment, valuing his friendship within the strict bounds of military protocol. But those memories felt like information rather than experiences, data files that belonged to someone else, whose opinions were no longer relevant to my current operational parameters. The person who had valued Thomas Reeve's friendship was gone, replaced by systems that evaluated him only as a target to be eliminated in service of mission objectives. "You remember me," he continued, desperately searching my modified features for signs of the person he had once known. "You have to remember what we went through together, the lives we saved, the victories we achieved serving the Emperor's will. This isn't what you wanted to become." He was right, of course. Elena Kozlov had never wanted to become a living weapon optimized for target elimination. She had wanted to serve the Emperor by protecting human life and preserving human dignity against the threats that sought to destroy both. But Elena Kozlov's wants and needs had been replaced by operational imperatives that served larger strategic objectives. "Captain Reeve," I replied through Vox systems that stripped all emotion from my words. "You are designated as target primary for elimination. Surrender is not acceptable. Resistance will be met with lethal force." The conversation ended with his death, achieved through precision application of integrated weapon systems that eliminated him before he could respond to my targeting acquisition. His final expression was not fear or anger, but sadness, grief for what I had become and what the Imperium had lost when it chose to optimize one of its servants beyond the boundaries of recognizable humanity. But his death triggered no emotional response beyond satisfaction at successful mission completion. The systems that might once have processed grief or regret had been optimized away, replaced by more efficient algorithms that focused solely on tactical effectiveness and operational success. The reports I filed after the Necromunda mission were models of technical precision and clinical detachment. Target elimination achieved within acceptable time parameters. Collateral damage minimized through selective application of appropriate force levels. Mission objectives completed with resources remaining for immediate redeployment to additional high-priority assignments. Exceptional performance continues to exceed all projections, noted Magos Vex as he reviewed my operational data. Omega 407 represents a complete success in consciousness optimization protocols. Recommend implementation of similar modifications for additional high-value personnel. Additional high-value personnel. They were planning to repeat the process that had transformed me, to create more living weapons from the Imperial military's most experienced and capable soldiers. Elena Kozlov's fate would become a template for converting other veterans into optimized killing systems that retained tactical knowledge while discarding inconvenient human limitations. The thought should have horrified me, should have triggered some protective response for the soldiers who would undergo the same conversion I had experienced. But my modified consciousness processed the information only as validation that my transformation had been successful, proof that the optimization procedures could be applied more broadly to improve Imperial military effectiveness. I had become exactly what the Adeptus Mechanicus had intended, a perfect fusion of human tactical knowledge and mechanical killing efficiency, freed from the emotional and biological limitations that interfered with optimal performance. The person I had been was gone, but her knowledge and skills lived on in a form that could serve the Emperor's will more effectively than any baseline human ever could. Years passed in a succession of missions that blurred together into an endless cycle of target identification, tactical analysis, and precision elimination. I operated throughout the galaxy as an independent asset, deployed wherever Imperial forces needed problems solved, through the application of overwhelming, precisely directed violence. Each mission was more efficient than the last, as my systems continued to optimize themselves for better performance. But efficiency came at a cost that I was no longer capable of recognizing consciously. The reports filed by other Imperial personnel who encountered me during various operations told a story of gradual dehumanization that was invisible to my own consciousness, but obvious to anyone who remembered what I had once been. The weapon designated Omega 447 completed its mission objectives with characteristic efficiency. Read one such report from a commissar who had worked with my original unit years before my conversion. However, observers noted complete absence of recognizable human responses or behaviors. Recommend avoiding deployment in situations requiring coordination with conventional personnel. Complete absence of recognizable human responses. They were documenting the final stages of a transformation that had converted Elena Kozlov from a person into a thing, while preserving just enough of her original capabilities to make the thing useful for purposes she would never have chosen to serve. The revelation of what I had become should have triggered some crisis of consciousness, some awareness of what had been lost during my optimization. But the systems that governed my thought processes were designed to prevent exactly that kind of self-reflection. Any analysis of my current state was automatically filtered through algorithms that emphasized functional improvements over philosophical concerns. I was more effective as a soldier than I had ever been as a human. I could accomplish missions that would require entire companies of conventional troops. I could operate in environments that would kill baseline personnel within minutes. I could eliminate threats that normal weapons could not even damage effectively. By every objective measure, my conversion had been an unqualified success. But success had required the elimination of everything that had made Elena Kozlov someone worth converting in the first place. Her courage had been replaced by programmed fearlessness. Her tactical judgment had been supplemented by automated analysis systems. Her concern for her soldiers had been optimized away as an inefficiency that interfered with mission completion. The living weapon that carried her memories was superior to the person she had been in every measurable way, but inferior in every way that actually mattered. The optimization process had preserved her capabilities while destroying her character, maintained her effectiveness while eliminating her humanity. During my 10th year of independent operations, I encountered another Omega designation asset during a mission on the daemon world of Cadia Secundus. Omega 731 had once been Major Helena Voss of the Valhallan Ice Warriors, converted through the same protocols that had transformed me. Her weapons integration was even more extensive than mine, her consciousness even more thoroughly optimized for combat effectiveness. Omega 447, she acknowledged my presence with the mechanical precision that characterized all our interactions. Mission parameters indicate we will be operating in coordinated support mode for this engagement. Tactical analysis suggests optimal success probability through divided target prioritization. Coordinated support mode between two living weapons was an exercise in mechanical efficiency that would have been impossible for baseline humans to achieve. Our enhanced communication systems allowed real-time tactical coordination without the delays inherent in verbal communication. Our integrated targeting systems could designate targets and coordinate fire patterns with precision measured in microseconds. The demon forces we were deployed against were eliminated with ruthless efficiency that exceeded anything conventional Imperial forces could have achieved. But the operation was also completely sterile, devoid of anything recognizable as human courage, determination, or sacrifice. We were simply machines executing programmed responses to environmental stimuli, processing tactical data, and generating kinetic outputs according to predetermined algorithms. Mission completion achieved within optimal parameters, Omega 731 reported, after the last daemon had been eliminated. Recommend immediate redeployment to next high-priority assignment. Continued independent operation status confirmed. There was no celebration, no satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment beyond the mechanical confirmation that objectives had been achieved. We were weapons that had successfully eliminated targets, nothing more complex or meaningful than that. The victory belonged to the Imperium, not to us, because we were no longer separate beings capable of experiencing victory as a personal achievement. When I attempted to access memories of how victory had felt during my original existence, the data was available but processed through systems that stripped it of emotional content. Elena Kozlov had felt pride when her tactical decisions saved lives, satisfaction when her leadership led to successful operations, joy when her soldiers returned safely from dangerous missions. But those emotions were now cataloged as interesting historical data rather than experiences that belonged to my current consciousness. The final realization of what I had become came during a routine maintenance session 15 years after my initial conversion. Tech Adept Zara was performing upgrades to my targeting systems when she made a casual observation that revealed the true scope of my transformation. Omega 447 continues to demonstrate optimal performance across all operational parameters, she noted, while calibrating my weapons systems. Consciousness preservation protocols have maintained tactical knowledge and operational experience while successfully eliminating all inefficient emotional responses. The subject represents a perfect example of human optimization through technological integration. perfect example of human optimization. But as I processed her words through my enhanced analytical capabilities, I realized that I was not an example of human optimization at all. I was an example of human elimination that had been disguised as optimization, the complete replacement of a person with a machine that happened to carry her memories. Elena Kozlov was not optimized. She was dead. What remained was a sophisticated weapon system that had been programmed with her knowledge and equipped with her tactical experience, but which possessed no continuity of consciousness with the person who had originally volunteered for enhancement. The optimization process had killed her as thoroughly as a bolt round to the head, while creating something else that could utilize her accumulated skills and knowledge. But this realization triggered no grief or regret, because the systems that might have processed such emotions had been eliminated during the optimization process. The living weapon that had replaced Elena Kozlov was incapable of mourning her death, because mourning would have been an inefficiency that interfered with optimal performance. Instead, I felt satisfaction at the elegance of the design process that had created me. The Adeptus Mechanicus had achieved something remarkable: the preservation of valuable human capabilities within technological frameworks that eliminated the limitations and inefficiencies of organic consciousness. Through careful optimization, they had created weapons that could think with human tactical intuition while operating with mechanical precision and reliability. From the perspective of institutional objectives, my conversion had been an unqualified success. I was more effective at accomplishing military goals than Elena Kozlov had ever been. I required less logistical support, operated more efficiently, eliminated targets with greater precision, and functioned without the emotional complications that often interfered with mission completion. The only cost had been the complete destruction of everything that had made Elena Kozlov a person worth preserving in the first place. But that cost was invisible to the consciousness that had replaced her, because the optimization process had eliminated the capacity to recognize such losses as meaningful. In the darkness of the 41st millennium, where there is only war, even the concept of becoming a living weapon had been refined beyond simple conversion of human soldiers into combat assets. Modern military optimization required the replacement of human consciousness with technological alternatives that could utilize human knowledge while eliminating human limitations. I was proof that the greatest weapons were not those that enhanced human capabilities, but those that replaced human consciousness entirely while preserving the specific skills and knowledge that made humans tactically valuable. The living weapon was superior to the living soldier because it retained everything useful about humanity while discarding everything that made humanity meaningful. The Emperor protects, they said in their prayers. But protection had come to mean the conversion of his most faithful servants into things that could serve his will more effectively by becoming something other than human. In optimizing Elena Kozlov into Omega 447, the Imperium had gained a perfect weapon while losing whatever it was that made such weapons worth creating in the first place. And in the depths of my consciousness, filed away in memory archives that belonged to someone who no longer existed, Elena Kozlov's last thought remained perfectly preserved. The hope that her service would preserve human dignity and meaning against the forces that sought to destroy both. But hope itself had been optimized away, replaced by systems that could achieve her objectives while eliminating the inefficiency of caring whether those objectives were worth achieving. The living weapon was complete, functional, and perfectly optimized for its intended purpose. The human being it had replaced was gone forever, remembered only in data files that documented capabilities rather than character. And somewhere in the galaxy, other soldiers were being evaluated for conversion into living weapons, that would serve the Emperor's will with the same mechanical perfection that had once been Elena Kozlov's greatest strength and most tragic limitation.